My name is Martin Zaiček. I'm from NGO Archimera from Bratislava, and now I will show you the content of our part of this project, Vacant Modern, which we prepared during the whole year. Actually, when we was invited by KEK to cooperate on this project, we already was dealing with this kind of topics of vacant modernism in Slovakia. Me and my colleague Andrea Kalina, who is also here, we run the project which is called Abandoned Recreation, which is more or less like both architectural and art project. And last year we was really strongly doing research in Slovak architecture of spa towns and recreational sites, which actually became useless or somehow reconstructed in a wrong way. So the project Vacant Modern, we had a meeting in Bratislava at the end of April this year. We did also this kind of small conference, and we was somehow like dealing with this basic presentation. We somehow wanted to make we somehow wanted to make a kind of program research in this topic. So we was thinking how to maybe divide the whole problem of vacant modern in some categories. So me with my colleague Andrea Kalinova and also Dominika Belanska, who is not here, from Bratislava as well, we somehow write down these kind of basic categories of architecture of late modern or architecture of second half of 20th century, which somehow going through reconstruction, or it's still in intact form, or totally change the use. All of these features actually has a very strong impact of the state of architecture itself. It's obvious that if some architecture change the use, for example, from administrative building to apartment building, it totally changed not just the form of the building, but also like view and all materials and all dispositions. So it has nothing to do anymore with the original building, which was maybe word before, but it's not here. Of course, as Sharka mentioned, the problem of kind of protection, state protection of this architecture in Slovakia is even much worse than in Czech. We have a total amount of free buildings which is listed in the National Heritage List from the second half of 20th century. So it's very pity, because in fact if we realize that independent Slovakia or partly independent Slovakia was developed only in 1968 after federalization of Czechoslovakia, and since this year we can speak about autonomous architecture in Slovakia and of course a huge modernization of the country. So the years before we have really not as much compared, for example, to Czech part of Czechoslovakia, as we have after years 1968. So, first category we described was object in intact form and in use of terms of realization. So, as it was designed in the years, for example, in this case, Slovak Radio Building was designed in 1969, was finished in 1985, but it's still intact without renovation, still original use. The same example is House of Arts in city Piešťany, also Bad town on the in Western Slovakia, which was designed as well in the late 60s and opened in the half of 70s, and it's still in original form, in original use, and in quite good state of architecture as well. So this is the best actually examples. I still think that it's good to have architecture at least in this form. It doesn't matter if it's maybe a bit not abandoned, but in a good technical state. But it's still better than renovated in a bad way, because we need to do, of course, this kind of discussion how to protect this architecture. And in fact, we still don't have manual how to cope with the architecture of second half of 20th century. It's still in discussion. And state heritage committees are still, let's say, back-looking, or they really enjoy architecture of medieval times and of 19th century, and for them regular houses, for example, like this one in front of the street from the beginning of 20th century is much worse than some architecture of 20th century, which is maybe in terms of art quality and typology and materiality much worse than this kind of house. So it also needs to, we need to have some time to also deal with this problem. Second case was Vacant modern in renovation. It's obvious that some technical features of buildings was in very bad condition, so it went to closing of architecture. This is the example of Slovak National Gallery, which is on the riverbank of Danube in the very center of Bratislava. This design was made by architect Dedeček, Vladimír Dedeček, who is one of the greatest architects of second half of 20th century in Slovakia, or maybe even in Czechoslovakia, because he has also some realization in Czech. And this building was closed in the year 2000 because it was not possible anymore keep the art inside because water was leaking in and the temperature was getting really low and in summer very high. Of course, that was the reason why some people wanted to destroy the architecture itself, like not proper for the city. But finally, thanks also to the fact that it's owned by state, it's still in its original form, and we wait for another 15 years for renovation. It was said actually 2 years ago that it's going to be renovated, but it's still nothing going on there. So this is like the original design. It was designed in 1965, 64, 65. This final design was from 68, and it was finished in 1978, and was working till 2000. Yeah, and this is the other problem, is still like the discussion how to renovate these buildings. We can say, if we look like for the building, for example, this case really deserves to be National Heritage Site, but in fact the authors still live. So this law, which actually gives him like the power, like to choose new materiality or whatever, it's more than the fact of National Heritage Site, for example, because he is an author and he can decide. So he wanted to have this design in 60s already in a gold color, the facade supposed to be gold, not the red and white as you can see on this material. It's like regular aluminium cladding, which is quite very cheap. And he chose these colors of white and red, which for me and also for, I think, some aestheticians and theoreticians is also kind of feature of the time and aesthetics of the time. But he wanted to have it in gold, so the renovation actually will be in gold. So, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but it also needs to be solved to the future, how to cope also with this kind of problems. But I think it really needs some time as well. Third problem is, okay, it was Vacant modern in use but after renovation. And this is what we are dealing now. That for these examples are on the left is administrative buildings from late 60s on the riverbank in Bratislava, and on the right side is hotel in High Tatras. Both has the same use now, but totally changed the materiality and also some features of form, which led, at least on this hotel example, to in fact lower the quality of architecture in the end. But of course, none of this was protected by National Heritage Institute. So now we can use this example how it works when the renovation is not proper or not very let's say nice to architecture itself, that is much stronger, wants to like make new square meters or make new materiality because the old one is not fashionable anymore. But in fact, it really destroyed the art quality of architecture at all. This fourth example is also after in use after a construction, but you know, this is a very nice example. This was the one of the first, like this late modern avant-garde building in Slovakia. It was built in 1958 already in a very small new housing district, one of the first panel district in Bratislava, by architect Ivan Matušík, who later became really big person or great personality of architecture, Slovak architecture, and I will show you another example of his work as well. After the year 2000, this house was it was department store or local department store, very small, also with the services like hairdresser and cafes and so, and it totally changed the design and the amount of space, and in fact this architecture, which if now is in intact form, would be national heritage site, definitely, also because of the year of construction, which is already more than 50 years old, but due to this very bad reconstruction was totally destroyed and probably will never come back. So now this example is really like one of the worst examples we can show to public, that look what can happen to architecture which is not really the renovation or reconstruction done properly and without any sense of humanity, or how to, I don't know how to say it, it's like very rude way. We also have these examples that it slightly changed the use because of crisis in 2008. Some of big projects which was planned to be like new department stores or renovation of old sites for new apartment buildings or administrative buildings. Thanks to this crisis, some of these projects stopped, and there was enough time to think or rethink the use of the building itself. In the end, this example, it's former department store in Bratislava, the very city center, on the border with the historical center from the backyard, and it was planned to be like 5-star department store of like very luxurious boutiques, but today it's still empty. And a lot of NGOs are now having these offices there. There is one of the best bars in Bratislava for young people, this kind of hipster sites as well, and it's really helped to community in the local territory to really somehow push the economy of the locality as well. So rethink of use is also in some terms very positive way how to cope with it. This was I mentioned on the beginning is a reconstruction which changed the use. This is building on the first side not very interesting. Let's say that is a regular administrative building on the panel district in Ružinov, but it's made by architect Vladimír Dedeček, so the one who made design for Slovak National Gallery, and this is an example how they change the use from administrative building to regular and really cheap apartment buildings. So at least on the left side we can see that it had some kind of this outer aesthetic, and and even some quality of materials. For example, coverings of walls was made by stone, and now they change it to apartment buildings and covered with styrofoam. So this is really a problem which is happening right now, and I think it also has something to do not just with the growth of economy, which is the case of Bratislava, but in the rest of Slovakia, we also have problem that euro funds, euro money, can be spent on renovation of architecture in terms of make more efficient, energetic running of buildings and so. And we have really some bad examples that architecture really worth of materiality and architecture itself was totally destroyed by European money just because of, let's say like making a new efficiency of energy. So if you have travertine or white stone covering of the walls, like thousands of meters, they are really able to put it down and put just styrofoam on it. And nobody understands it, in fact, because they change material which is 100 times more expensive to something which is the cheapest one you can find on the market. And I don't say that about color than after, so everything is better than white. So Okay, this is also example of new use because it was the example, the first one example of Slovak radio building, which is still in use, intact form, very good quality and state. But its roof was planned by architect Stefan Svetko from 60s, was planned to become a new kind of sky streets, part of sky streets, which will connect new central train station with the new cultural and administrative district of Bratislava. This is really kind of interesting story about Bratislava itself, and Stefan Svetko as the main architect of this building as well. He was the main architect of 60s and 70s, and then in 70s he was slightly after Soviet invasion was like put away, but he was dreaming about metropolis of Bratislava, which will have till the year 2000 1 million inhabitants. So also some designs of buildings, and this radio building was also part of this story, was planned to be new culture feature or new culture monument for this such a big city as 1 million metropolis. And these roofs was planned to become these new streets and new squares and public spaces, but of course was never like public. Was closed from the 1985 when the building was finished. Last few years there was a public garden on the roof, and now also working there a new bar, and it's really helping to the design of the original design, like to show that something which was planned in 1960s can still be used even today. So not all ideas of the past are dead. They can somehow be also put to this nowadays situation. So this is an example, and it's really helpful, especially to this building, which some American and British newspapers are linked as one of the ugliest building in the world. You know, this crazy list of independence and similar, which really kind of boulevard or tabloid system. They like to tell that okay, this is really ugly building. In fact, this building is really interesting, and also a project like this public garden on the rooftop helps to promote it to young people and to general public, which now also can say that we love this architecture. And this is the most important case. As Sharka said, these kind of activities are most important. Making propagation of modern architecture is really necessary, because it can then end like this. And now we are going to the end of presentations slightly. I will show you some really bad examples how architecture which had some historical and artistic value became totally ruined or disappeared at all. This is example of department store in Ružinov. These buildings, Kamila, maybe this is interesting for you, was the first postmodern realization in Slovakia. It was in 1983, and not from the outside, but from the inside there was a lot of very nice features, like strictly postmodern, like entrance arches and so on. This building is totally now abandoned for almost 10 years. So it's now became a jungle of new forest and something, and this kind of new vegetation. And the future of the building, actually, it's nobody knows. Maybe another 10 years, it's gonna be just in the skeleton. Also, the problem of the building is one of the most precious architecture which we have in Bratislava is this department store from 1966. Opened in 1968 and 1973, the second part, hotel, which is now abandoned, and just the half of the building. Department store, which is on the right side, is still open, and it belongs to Tesco. And the hotel, this vertical, it's closed, and the owner openly declared that he wants to destroy the building and build a new shopping mall on the side. So this is the strongest fight we are really now dealing in Bratislava, and it still is not sure what's going to be in a close future. Of course, the area around is very abandoned and without any investments, because city itself also likes the idea that it would be somehow totally demolished and build something new there. So they don't invest nothing even to repair the covers of public spaces. And other way is also like owner of hotel who openly like doing as much as possible to destroy it. So very popular is to put fire in the buildings and destroy it this way. So this is gonna be also maybe the future of this house. Another public space on the rooftop which was never used, or it was used but only in 80s and beginning of 90s, then it was closed. Who knows the reason, I don't know. So really big square on the roof. Totally vacant and abandoned is Slovak television building. Each time it was the highest building in Czechoslovakia after its completion in 1972. Now it's totally empty, nobody knows what's going to be with the building. Television actually runs the new spaces. They don't need it anymore, and it's not as easy to sell it as well, but in fact, probably it's going to be demolished as well. You can see like these features from 60s and aesthetics of beginning of 70s, really nice artistic details and materiality. Was also because of television, there was realization for really big amount of money. And the last one, I think, or the maybe last one, is partly destroyed. One of the nicest sanatoriums in High Tatras from 1966 by architect Richard Pastor. As you can see on the model, it was almost 240 meters long building, which was curved due to altitude lines. It was almost invisible from the entrance to Štrbské Pleso, which is the main resort in High Tatras. And after this was the victim of development of after around the year 2008, they wanted to create a 5-star hotel there, and they did this to this building. So they partly totally destroyed, and they somehow was declared to renovate it, but it never happened. So. And of course, since 2008, it's empty in this state, in the altitude in 1,500 meters above sea level. So climatic conditions are also not good to protect this kind of, at least, relicts of architecture. Yeah, and this last category of architecture is obviously past. Into this category we can put Modernism buildings or late modern buildings, which was planned to be temporary, but also some of them which are not exist anymore, not because of its temporality, but because of bad owner or bad use. So, but this example is Expo Pavilions in the Park of Culture and Leisure in Bratislava from architect Ferdinand Milučky. Very nice architecture from the beginning of 70s, which was totally destroyed in 90s, also with the terms of fire, one of them at least. So, so there are past as well. So this was this kind of 12 categories of modern building heritage, what we have in Slovakia, which was divided. And it's obvious that the first category, as I mentioned, which is probably for the state of society, what we have right now, in terms of heritage attitude, they don't want to put these buildings to the list, and also to the atmosphere of the owner, who still don't see any word of architecture in late modern movement. It's still better to have it really intact and in original use. But unfortunately, many of the buildings, and many of them not in Bratislava but in regions, are really dealing with bad situation that are disappearing. So it's really needed on the one hand doing research and taking the pictures and materials of the states as is right now, because it really might be in the future, very close future, that many of them will not exist anymore. But hopefully till that, at least some social discussion in society will develop better conditions to protect at least what exists right now. So here are some web links. If you are interested in Slovak architecture, I can recommend you. The last link is register of Slovak Academy of Science, which is quite rich for materials. It's a lot of buildings are there, at least all Docomomo sites, and definitely some other as well. Abandoned Recreation, that's our project that we are doing with Andrea. There you can find buildings of recreation sites, late modern recreation sites. So these big sanatoriums and hotels as well. And Archimera is our NGO, so thank you.